Hey everyone, this is Bowie with Headphone.Guru. Today we have another video review today, and we'll be featuring the Hifiman Arya planar headphones using their stealth magnets, as well as their EF400 R2R ladder digital to analog converter with a lot of features packed into this tiny little box. Before we get started any further, if you have not yet done so, please feel free to visit our website at Headphone.Guru or subscribe to us on Facebook and your other social media accounts by clicking these links on the left. So thank you very much. So starting off with, I'd like to talk about the Hifiman Arya headphones, and we can see them right here. They're about $1,300, and for the most part, if you're familiar with the Hifiman line, they look very similar. They look similar to the Anandas and various other headphones in the range, just because of the very general shape and the suspension headband that you see right above you. But past that, a lot of the similarities start to fade. One of the key things that we talk about when we were mentioning the Arya is their new stealth magnets. And for those that are not familiar with what those are, the Amazon page does go a little further. Effectively, they've oriented the magnets such that in other designs, the magnets themselves will cause interference with each other, causing weird and different harmonics. But thankfully, due to Hifiman's tuning, they're saying that their stealth magnets, they're able to effectively adjust the sound waves a lot better due to the shape of the magnets themselves. Very interesting technology, and for the most part, a lot of the possible gains on the Arya can be attributed to the stealth magnets. Of course, there isn't a version to A and B against, but I really do like the Arya headphones. I've had the Anandas here for a while now, and I've been A and Bing both the Aryas, Anandas, the Sundaras, and of course, when I go to Can Jams, I've demoed quite a lot of Hifiman's offerings. At approximately the $1,300 price point, which is a little more than what the Ananda started out with back in the day, I will say that I'm definitely a fan of the Arya and what it brings to the table. So starting off with, what were my first impressions? I actually thought that the Arya was almost a more refined Ananda, but in some ways also very different. And when I say different, I really do mean that Ananda had a more open, larger soundstage with a fairly, clear ovular sort of center. And when we start talking about the Arya, it's almost like when you're at a concert, they've upgraded the central soundbar such that the vocals and everything coming at you directly are a lot more prominent. So we're talking more prominent vocals, a lot more transparent there, and instead of just being wide open and just really wide open like the ocean, like the Anandas that I have here are, when we move to the Aryas, it's pretty much more refined. The outside elements are pushed in a little bit more, so you still do get that soundstage, but it's not just as massively wide as the Anandas. And I think this might have to do with how the stealth magnets are orienting and pushing back against the sound waves a little differently, or rather letting the sound through much better. Looking at the plating of the planar magnetic diaphragm, they do look a little bit different for my eyes between the Arya and the Ananda. But of course, I'm not opening up these headphones, so there's really no way for me to directly compare. But regardless, just looking at it visually, from the amount of the driver I can see, they do seem to be oriented slightly differently. But of course, Hifiman can correct me on that. Regardless, though, at the price range, even compared to various other Odysseys that I have, including their planar magnetic offerings and the Euclid, it's really just an impressive offering at the price range. You pretty much get the level of transparency that you're looking for. You get a little more forward vocals than the Ananda. I don't want to call them directly forward, as a lot of other headphones are pretty much right in your face. The Aryas have that nice mid path between the Anandas and various other offerings, which are really just in your face. That I do like. Mr. Speakers, of course, makes other fantastic headphones, which do have really good vocals as well. One of the most surprising things about the Arya was actually when I was listening to Michael Jackson's Thriller. During the opening moments, the door opens, and typically, for the most part, you don't feel much. But when I was listening with the Aryas, you almost felt the sound pressure difference when those doors open. It was almost a visceral experience right there in person. So whatever it is about these drivers, they really can produce a lot more energy than various other planar magnetic headphones that I've used in the past. And it's really just so interesting how they do that. On top of that, the what do you call it? The sound signature is also a little bit darker on the Arias. I don't want to call it dark because it isn't. It's still definitely a much lighter sound signature than, say, an LCD2, which definitely veers off the ends. But you could imagine the Anandas, if they were a white, clear plate, just add a little bit of paint there, and you pretty much get the Arias. I feel a lot more personality and characteristic with the Arya than I do with the Ananda. I'm not saying that the Ananda is more transparent. I'm just saying that the Ananda really does feel a lot more open. It's pretty much almost like listening to music in an amphitheater, out in the open. The arias almost feel more like a personal concert. A lot more directed mids, vocals, instruments are right there, and the brightness is just at such a nice level where it's not really peaky like the Anandas. The Anandas sometimes can get a little bright for me, which for my ears just don't hold up too well. But even with multiple sessions of listening sessions with the Arya, I can't say that there's really been a time where I've gone, this is too hot. On top of that, for those that are gamers out there, these also function very well for any sort of competitive FPS that you need positioning for, Valorant, CSGO, or any battle royale that you think of. These have worked phenomenally, just like the Anandas have in my arsenal. I might even say they're a little better just because they are a little more mid-focused than the Anandas, but regardless, either choice of the Anandas or the Aryas here would work best. If you've used Hifimans in the past, you're going to be familiar with this sort of suspension headband. Almost everyone has it. It's a very, you can see it right here and right here. Yeah, they're HE1000s, a little bit on the Ananda, but of course it's not as angled, as well as their Arya Stealth. All have that sort of more angled design over there. Can't say that I'm a super big fan of the Hifiman suspension headband. It's comfortable and it's super lightweight relative to offerings from, say, Odyssey. But at the end of the day, walking out to get your package while wearing these is definitely not the most fashionable choice. But regardless, me using my Hifimans over the last 2 to 3 years, they've definitely held up. So I can't really say that this is not a vetted design. I've had them for years. And despite my initial thoughts years and years ago about this sort of design, they've certainly held up. So really, whatever your cup of tea is on the headbands is what I'd say to go for. And next, we're going to be moving into talking about the EF400. So for the most part, these retail at about $600. Right now, at the time of filming this video, they have a slightly back-to-school sale where they take $100 if you bought another headphone. Either way, your mileage may vary. The prices will fluctuate regardless. One of the key things about it that's actually interesting is it's actually made for international use as well. There's actually a selector switch on the back, and you can actually see it on the bottom of the unit right here. You can go from 115 over to 230, so you can use it internationally if you wish. It's really such a versatile product just due to how many inputs, outputs, as well as knobs that it has on it. So right off the bat, you can see there's 2 knobs on the front. The one on the left is pretty simple. It lets you select 4 selections, high gain and low gain. And for those 2 options, you have no oversampling as well as oversampling. A lot of people that use R2R ladder DACs, they have their own preferences. Some believe that oversampling is the way to go, and others believe no oversampling, just keep it at the default sample rate is how they fly. Regardless, I don't have a direct preference. I typically kept mine on the low gain oversampling mode just because I felt that was a little superior. But regardless, choose what you would like and go from there. Past that, on the front, if we look a little bit closer, you will actually see, if this pops up, okay, that did not pop up, that there are 4 plugs, right? Starting right here on my left, you have basically your single-ended output. This is your 1/4-inch jack. Right to the right over there is another single-ended output, and this is just your standard 3.5 millimeter. After that, we get to our balance. So this is your balance jack, as well as your balance headphone output as well. On the back is where it gets a little interesting. It actually comes with a line out, a balanced line out right here, as well as an RCA single-ended line out. For your choices of input, they actually come with an old school USB input right here. I forgot the direct name of this, might be USB-B. But on the right of it, it actually comes with USB-C as well. I've used both. Both of them actually worked immediately right off the bat, both USB-C as well as the older style input. In my opinion, considering how heavy and big this unit is, I might recommend this larger plug just because you have less of a chance of snagging the cable, it coming loose, as well as the larger cables do seem to have a lot more of um, the wiring wrap around it, which might help with interference as well. And the ones I have seen do come with the ferrite cores, so it might help there as well. But past that, it's a very simple unit that has a lot of features. Power input, multiple country selector, balance outputs, single-ended outputs line out, and pretty much your various plugs in the front. One of the things that I would have liked the EF400 to have included in the box is actually the USB cables. When straight off the box, you pretty much just get the monolith unit itself as well as a power cable. That is it. There's really nothing else in there. Given the fact that you had to really just source your own, really no one has a USB-B cable these days. Only printers and on older devices do. So in my opinion, it would have been nice to have included either a USB-C to USB-A or a USB-B to USB-A cable in the box. Would have just made setup a lot easier and would have been a great nice to have for the customer as well. But what really makes this unit a little special? In my opinion, it is the fact that it is a combo unit of relatively decent size to move around, have it in your living room to transport. But it's really the fact that it's an R2R ladder DAC at under $600 with various balanced and single-ended outputs with the ability to select oversampling, no oversampling, high gain, low gain, and the amount of power this can produce. Even with my planar magnetic headphones, the low gain mode at less than half knob was more than enough to supply them. So think about that for a second and how much power this unit can drive. As we move more into the diagrams, you can kind of see where they're getting at. Right down below, you pretty much have your DAC module right there that they call the Himalaya. You have your actual high current amplifier circuit, your 3000 microfarad large capacitor, as well as their super fancy little transformer over to the left of the unit, which is going to be right about here. On the bottom, you also have these nice padded feet. They actually are really nice. Typically, when you move units around, they get scratched and all that. But Hifiman thought ahead and pre-applied these pads so that when you move them around, they're already there to not damage or scratch any of your devices. Even after 2 months, still looking very pristine, right? Barely even any fingerprints. Don't look at that. So how does it sound compared to, say, some Delta Sigma DACs? But of course, we can't really just compare Delta Sigma to R2R. There's so many offerings out there. But at that same price range, how does it directly compare? It is going to be a little harder because this is a combo unit, and a lot of audiophiles have, separate modular units, one that's for a DAC, one that's for an amplifier, and possibly even more amplifiers chained on, so on and so forth down the line. In my opinion, the R2R using the Hifiman DAC module is clean to a fault, in a sense. It almost is like drinking plain water versus drinking slightly flavored water compared to various other Delta Sigma DACs that I've had. I do like my music to have a little more character to it at this price range. As you move higher up, the basis changes. People go towards neutrality, transparency, etc. But when you're at that $500 price range, you're really looking for slightly added characteristics that enhance the music. Almost think of it as, sake that they use different water sources for, etc., etc. The Hifiman EF400 was almost fantastic in the sense that you didn't really notice that the DAC was there, but also at the same time, it was a little bit too transparent. It felt a little bit too wide versus various other Delta Sigma DACs, Burson, etc., that really focused the vocals a bit more, had a little more punch, a little more bass to it, that the EF400s might not have directly had personally. So am I saying that the EF400 is bad? Actually, absolutely not. This is actually one of the best values that I would be recommending people at this price range. You have so much power output at your disposal. You have an R2R ladder DAC, oversampling, no oversampling, balance outputs, balance inputs, a line out, USB-C. The list goes on. All it's really missing at this point is an Android operating system and, of course, a touchscreen. And you would pretty much have everything. Given the fact that this is $599, possibly even less with whatever promotions they might run in the future, you pretty much have one single device that you can use for a lifetime that will handle almost everything you can plug into it. 3.5 millimeter and quarter inch has existed for decades, and they're still here. So are all the XLR standards as well. So at this price range, I really cannot think of too many other combinational units that I would recommend more than the EF400 at the $500-$600 price range. So I like it there. It is lacking a little bit of the characteristics that I typically look for, but regardless, it's great value. It's transparent. It's a very clean sound, which is great for people that want to go towards that. But for those that want a little more characteristic, a little more bass, a little more of an intimate vocal range that you might get with, choosing different op amps, Burr Brown, TI, ESS, etc. I almost do, in some way, some part of me prefer the old school way of, choosing your own op amp modules, choosing whatever Wolfson that you like and dropping it in there. It really does almost have a sort of analog feel to it versus the R2Rs. So in conclusion, I would say that today, the best value out of the entire desk really does come down to the EF400 R2R. $600 with all the features that it has, a very clean, neutral sound, a little bit too clean in some cases, in my opinion, a little light. But regardless, at this price range, it's really fantastic and it's really inching right into a lot of the offerings directly from the Chinese market itself, FIO, etc. On the Arya side, it's a little bit different. It's $1,300, which for most people will put it in the high range, depending on where you start. So it is going to be a little more. Is it that much better than the Ananda? It really depends on what you're looking for. If you love soundstage, just want that open-ended feel and still want amazing sound signature, the Anandas, which at their going price range now of sub $800, really is a fantastic choice. It's probably one of my most used headphones. It's comfortable. It's super lightweight, super accurate sound, and one of the top recommendations for me. But the moment we move past there and we go towards the upper range, what really separates the sub 1,000 range from the 1,000 range, and in my opinion, it's really a lot of the characteristics that we're seeing from the Arya, which is the added fact that it has that added emphasis on the vocals. It's a lot more clear. The instruments just have a lot more of that separation, that tonality. The fact that the Anandas get a little bright sometimes, but the Aryas with their stealth magnets and their tuning have fixed a lot of those brightness issues and make it a more well-rounded package. Is it almost, a couple $100 more that is worth it? Completely up to you. But in my opinion, if I had to choose one of these sub $1,500 headphones that are currently on the market for home use, because it is open back, the Aryas would probably be one of the top couple on my list. I do have a soft spot for Auto Z as well. But regardless, at the end of the day, I gotta say, Hifiman have outdone themselves with the Arya as well as the EF400, and it's really been a pleasure having them here and listening to them. For more content like this, video reviews, audio reviews, show coverage, etc., please visit Headphone.Guru. Subscribe to our Facebook page. There's a lot more content that we'll be posting in the future. So appreciate you all joining us today for this video review, and have a great day.